Hi, my name's Ian Wright, and I'm going to do a little series of podcasts on managing stress. And I think this will take up probably maybe 3, 10, 15-minute podcasts, at the end of which I'm going to include a little contemplation, meditation, so we can do this as a kind of exercise to help manage stress. And we all have stress. What is stress? The physiologist Hans Selye talked about 2 different types of stress. He talked about eustress and distress. Eustress means good stress. For example, we need the slight stress of an alarm clock going off in the morning. Otherwise, we won't get out of bed. We need that kind of stressful, slightly feeling of thirst or hunger in order to eat. If we don't get stimulated, we don't respond and we won't engage with life. So eustress is almost classified as good stress. Distress is classified as a stress which is actually causing us problems. And stress has a variety of physiological effects on the body, both short-term and long-term. And I'll talk about these a little bit, and also talk about hopefully trying to engage with them just to calm them down and rebalance them. And also, we have to look at distress or stress that's causing us a problem from a very wide angle, because actually, something that would deeply stress me would not stress you at all. So we all have very different stressors, something that will find us, that we find stressful. I mean, there have been categorized in a variety of psychological studies, the big stressors in life, which are financial security, grief, death of those around us, divorce, etc., etc. Security is very important, like a need for emotional or financial security. But some people can be completely broke and be completely happy, and other people could have, be down to their last 100,000 in the bank, and they could be in a terrible state of distress about that. So everybody is different. Some people get extremely distressed about worries about their health, whereas other people are very blasé about that. So what stresses you doesn't stress me. What stresses me doesn't stress you. And the important thing, I think the first thing that we have to do is to actually really work out what is our stressor, what will trigger us into a stressful or even anxious reaction. A stress reaction in the body acts like a potential response to a threat. So a stressor could be classified as a threat, something that threatens us. So a threat could be a thought or a belief or an idea, or it could be a threat that I've got no money in my bank, or a threat that I'm concerned about this ache I've got in my shoulder, or I'm concerned about my daughter, or, there's a million things that could be a potential trigger. So what we have to do is try and work out what are our key factors. And I think that needs a real sense of honesty about it, to say, actually, I do, for example, worry about my health, or I do worry about some other factor that's a real trigger to me, and that comes from beliefs. And beliefs filter what we believe in, filters how we perceive certain stresses. So one element of stress are particular stressors, as in triggers that can stress us or create anxiety almost in us. I'm writing a book on anxiety. So anxiety and stress kind of go hand in hand. Anxiety or anxiety disorders are actually an abnormal response to perceived threat. Whereas stress is something that we all have. It's just how we respond to it. This is such a huge subject. But we're just going to start, by introducing it and start to learn how our bodies react to it and how we can change that a little bit. So the first point we're talking about is this idea of being really honest with ourselves about what triggers stress. And so what I think is a good idea is to sit there and write down the 10 things that will stress us most. Worry about health, worry about money, worry about whatever, relationship or an important, actually, that's been shown in multiple studies is how well we feel valued, actually. And am I valued in my work? Am I valued by the people around me? Or am I valued by my customers? Or am I valued by whatever I do? Do I value my own work? Is it something that is important and feel good to me? Or am I valued in my relationship? Am I loved or am I respected? Do I feel loved by my kids or whatever it is, So relationship is important. So we've got work, we have environment, we have relationship. These are kind of key areas that can be triggering to a stress reaction if they're not right. And we have to write them down and look at them, because actually what we can do is once we have potential stressors, then we can start to look at what our filtering beliefs are that trigger these stress responses. And we will come back to beliefs and stresses in the next one. Another one that's important is just and this is something I talk about a lot, is the overstimulation and the lack of tempo and timing that we have in our lives. We're always time rushed now. There's never any time for true rest, and we'll do a podcast on true rest at the end of this, which I think is very important. We always feel like we're in time deficit. We're in a time of information overload. So we're chronically bombarded by information, advertising, news. We live in an age of anxiety where everything seems destabilized. There's always pressures, and they're coming from actually media sources, social media, the usual suspects that we talk about all the time. But actually, these things trigger responses in our nervous systems. Watching, for example, something stressful in the news has a physiological response to us. And I think we need to, if we're going to watch the news, I think we need to actually do practices and techniques on when there is people struggling and suffering. So, for example, if you see somewhere in the world there's someone who's suffering from genocide or whatever, and we feel the tension, when we're watching it, we empathize, of course, Actually, we empathize less and less because we're so overstimulated. That is actually a survival response so that we are not overstimulated at all times. But it can trigger a physiological response. So when I'm watching the news, I send love and peace to everybody because it's my only way of dealing with that. And that I find that helpful to kind of try and put something positive towards people who are struggling and suffering in the world. And I think that's our only way of interacting without it becoming very stressful for us. So, little things. So we're overstimulated. We have lost our sense of, natural timing and tempo. Meaning, we'll sit here, we'll have this lunch, and just let the food go down and sit quietly, have a bit of gentle conversation, and then we'll go back to what we're doing. No way. We eat, we have our coffee, we eat our sandwich, and we're literally running between one thing and the next. There's no time to sit, and that actually physiologically irritates our systems. Our gastrointestinal systems need a little bit of peace and serenity. What happens actually, when I will talk about this in the next one, about particular elements of our nervous systems and how they are affected when we're stressed, for example, our sympathetic nervous system, when stimulated, slows down the digestive process, tightens up our sphincters in our gut, and actually we don't digest properly. So if we eat on the run, it's not going to digest very easily. And so you're not getting the nutrition from it and your gut blocks up, So it's very physiologically very simple, actually, but we'll talk about that a little more next time. So stress is something, as we've kind of been talking about, stress is something that causes distress. So distress is something that triggers a response in our nervous systems which is unfavorable. So there is a variety of ways of dealing with stress. One way is to have a look at the effect, and this is what the next podcast will be, is looking at the effect of certain beliefs through threads of actually perceived stressors, and how we can just find a way to actually help those to soften a little bit. The other one is stimulation. So we have an overstimulation, so we can learn tricks and habits to not overstimulate. For example, do not watch anything stressful, or do not get involved with your phone or social media after 9 o'clock at night. So you can have an hour or two where you can have general conversation, or you can watch something supportive and calming, or read something pleasant, or listen to music, something that is allowing us to sleep better. Because actually, if we're overstimulated, our nervous system's overstimulated, and we're thinking of stressful things or being subjected to stressful imagery before we go to sleep, how can we have a relaxed and calm sleep? So there has to be cut-off points. We'll come back to that. The other side is, if we're stressed, it's almost like a glass that's full of water, right? You add in all the different stressors until the glass gets full. And when the glass gets full, you add in the next one and it overflows. Overflows means we get angry, we get upset, we get ill, we get distressed. We can't cope anymore because, we all have glasses, and they only have a certain full point, and we have to learn particular ways and methods to actually take some of that out of the glass, empty our glasses, so that we can actually start the next day refreshed, not stressed and distressed. So we'll talk about in one of the next ones is we're going to talk about actually the idea of taking up a practice, finding a way to distress. Now, taking up a practice for some people could mean actually taking up a meditative practice or yoga or something that will actually calm us and make us more tranquil. Other people, actually, what would suit them is to do, kickboxing or something very active, which actually releases in a very strong way all our sort of pent-up tension. And I think that's equally valid. In fact, for me personally, I think that actually we need both. You need strong activity and you need quiet activity. I tend to do strong activity, and then I will come back to doing quiet activity, which will rebalance me. So it's the release first, and then coming back into more of a stillness. And that balance, whatever our practice is, and everybody has their own practice that they have to start for themselves. But the important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is to have a practice. And so I have to do my qigong, my tai chi, my meditation every day. That is the one thing I'll do more than anything else. And because I personally need that to keep in a balanced enough state to do all my work. And I couldn't do it without that. And I think we all need this. It's very, very important and very strong. So a practice, honesty with ourselves, looking at our stressors, okay? And next time we're going to talk about beliefs and stressors, and also we're going to talk about how our nervous system reacts and what it actually does and how to change that. And we're going to learn specific techniques. So this is the first introduction, and we will pick this up, and next time we'll do some exercises and practices. I wish you well.